Welcome to episode 12 of Writers and Fighters, a podcast hosted by yours truly, AJ Ortega. As you know, each week I interview either someone in the writing world or someone in the fighting world. Today I have someone from the latter. My buddy TJ Koracin, aka Tom Puppet, is a professional wrestling videographer. And when I first started this podcast, I always wanted to be quite open with the interpretation of writer and fighter. Sure, I wanted people who write books, but I also knew I wanted songwriters, screenwriters, comic book writers, journalists, playwrights. And of course, I wanted people who fight for a living. But I also wanted to interview like referees, trainers, managers, ring announcers, and cameramen. So stick with the podcast and you'll see a variety with each episode on both the writers and fighters side of the podcast. And so TJ's been a friend of mine for years. We worked in retail together back in El Paso, and we connected, on a friendly level because of wrestling and video games mostly. And it's been cool to see how we were just fans, and then he ends up recording for independent promotions, and I end up wandering into that world as a referee here and there. And he records a lot of lucha libre, Mexican-style pro wrestling, since he's based there in El Paso. And in this interview, we talk about how he got into recording and editing, talk about the COVID hiatus and all that good shiz. So hang around a bit for that, and that interview is coming up. There was some sad news in the boxing world. Marvelous Marvin Hagler passed away over the weekend at age 66. And he was one of the best middleweights and has one of the most memorable wins over Tommy the Hitman Hearns. And if you have 10 minutes, you should watch that one, as it's regarded as one of the most exciting fights, not just from that era, but ever. In addition to that, he also had a 15-round war with Roberto Duran, the great Panamanian fighter. And he retired after losing a split decision to Sugar Ray Leonard, which is rare because he had a ridiculous KO percentage at like 78%, always stopping fighters rather than forcing it into the judges' hands. The boxing world lost a true great, so rest in power, champ. Speaking of leaving a fight in the judges' hands, the Gallo Estrada versus Chocolatito fight was great. The decision was maybe not so great. This was a super flyweight world championship, and the fight was too close for me to call because I was enjoying it so much. But on the fly, maybe I had Chocolatito winning by a round, maybe a draw. These guys threw more than 2,000 punches combined. According to CompuBox, I think Chocolatito had more volume and more accuracy. But in any case, it was a split decision. 115-113 for Estrada, 115-113 for Chocolatito. And then there was a 117-111 for Estrada, and he won in questionable fashion. And he's Mexican, so I was rooting for him. But that's just a really sketchy scorecard. And again, I think a draw could have been possible. And a lot of folks, I think, saw it that way. And even with my pro-Mexican bias, I didn't see Estrada on top, honestly. So maybe he won. Well, he won, but maybe we have that invisible implied asterisk next to that win. But that's the criticism of inconsistent judging. So it was an odd one. A rematch, I think 6-8 years in the making, and so they're evened up, and so there's already conversation about having a rematch. It would do well. It was very much a fan's fight, even if not a fan's decision. Anyhow, it's about time for the interview. So here's a quick one with pro wrestling cameraman TJ Koracin, a.k.a. Tom Puppet, a.k.a. the Gringo Warrior, a.k.a. the best videographer and editor in the Southwest. So kick back and enjoy. All right, and I am sitting here, not exactly sitting here with, but sitting screen to screen with my buddy TJ, a videographer for independent pro wrestling. Tell us a little bit about yourself, TJ.
Like you said, I go ahead and I record wrestling here in El Paso, Texas, mostly lucha libre style shows. Have done some American wrestling as well. And yeah, after being a fan for like 30 plus years, I finally jumped in and started recording it.
Cool. What first like got you interested in I know you've been a fan and we'll talk about that in a moment, but what made you want to be like behind the camera?
Behind the camera originally came from me wanting to make like movies and things to that effect, actually be a director. And as I was going to school for that, I kind of fell out of love of it. So I was like, you know what, let me go ahead and try something else. And I had developed a like kind of a friendship with some of the wrestlers at Extreme Cruises Wrestling that would run shows here. And I sent the promoter a message saying, hey, do you mind if I try to record the shows? I've never tried that before. And he was like, yeah, sure, go for it. And yeah, that's how I pretty much got my foot in. That's what made me want to do it. Just try something new.
That's interesting that you started in kind of wanting to do the directing and stuff like that rather than just all the other sides of production. I was kind of similar. I wanted to make movies and stuff. I was a big, watch every movie every weekend at the theater, worked at a video store, rented everything. And I was like, I want to make movies and this and that. But yeah, studying it in a certain regard made me not want to or not feel attracted to it so much, and then went just specifically the writing route and other avenues. And I think that's interesting that you made that pivot to, well, let me still utilize the stuff that you have an eye for film, because not just because you studied it, but because you take it in.
Hmm.
And then you're able to get a very practical thing, like people need their stuff recorded. And so I thought that's an interesting pivot from let me do the filmmaking thing to recording a live production.
Yeah, exactly. And the way I look at it is like with movies and things like that, you know what you're going to film. So it's you set the camera up and you know you're moving over to the right or you're moving this way or whatever. And you do it 4, 5, 6 times. That gets very boring. I like with wrestling and other things, the spur moment. Oh, look, this dude's jumping over here. Let me run to the other side of the ring because I don't talk to any of the guys about what they're planning on doing or anything. I go in blind just like a fan and kind of follow it around.
That's interesting because you know how wrestling works. You know how the show goes. Do you think like maybe you can anticipate where to be, how to make those adjustments on the fly, like maybe more than somebody who, is good behind a camera but doesn't do the wrestling thing? Maybe they record, I don't know, basketball or football or something, the
Oh
news,
yeah,
right?
oh yeah, 100%. Just like, and I always tell people this, like when you're watching any sport, you can kind of tell where the play is going to go. Like in basketball, you see the guy open, okay, he's going to get the ball. Same thing in wrestling. There are small, very little tells, which
Hmm.
being a referee, you know what's going to happen. You know where the action's going to be going. And from watching that since I was a child, you pick up on those things. And you're like, okay, cool. They're setting up for a dive. They're setting up for a big splash. They're going to do the dramatic tag, whatever. So you have to like kind of jump into the right spot, be aware of that, and just be aware of your surroundings. Obviously, definitely helps out a lot knowing the sport.
And so I like that you just went straight to the guy that runs the thing and said, hey, let me send this promoter a message. Can I do this? How did that first gig go?
It it went well. The promoter actually didn't even make the show. He had some car problems and couldn't make it, so it's just the boys running the thing, and no one knew I was supposed to be there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so like, hey TJ, what are you doing here? I was like, I'm filming. They're like, you are? Yeah, I guess. So they're like, all right, well, I guess do what you want. I don't know. Like no one knew anything, so I was like, okay. So for their first show, I was the first couple matches, I was afraid to get up on the ring because I was like, I don't want to piss anybody off.
Of
So
course.
I was kind of like 3, 4 rows back behind the fans, trying to zoom in and film it and everything. And it looked pretty bad. But after like a couple matches, I was like, what, screw it. If I'm gonna do this, I gotta get closer and make it look good. So I finally did it that way, and it was fun. Video came out okay.
Sure.
The promoter loved it. He thought it looked great, and I've been working with him since. But he was like, "Why were you afraid to get up on the ring the first couple of matches?" Like, I didn't want you to get messages from like fans saying, "Hey, this jackass is in my way and I can't see."
Yeah, because you don't
But
know. I get that kind of coming in as everybody at some point going into the wrestling world, even tangentially, you as a videographer, me as a referee, ring announcers, photographers, things like this. Everybody's an outsider at some point, right? When you go in. And it's a weirdly protective world. And you feel that, and we know that as fans, we know that. And we want to have that respect and be like, oh, the last thing I want to do is pull some J-Brone move and I look dumb, or I make the promotion look dumb, or whatever the case may be. So I get that. Oh, I was so nervous my first refereeing gig. Oh, what if I don't do the right thing and I'm screwing it up for, everyone or whatever. And so I get that apprehension of wanting to get into the action and just be part of the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, not only that, I'm also 6'4", and I know there's little kids in the front row. So I don't want to sit there and not let them be able to. They paid their money to watch this show. I don't want to be in the way and be that guy. I really try not to be.
Yeah. And that's one of those things that, when you watch wrestling on television, you hardly see the cameramen, right? That's an interesting illusion. They're always right out of the line of sight, right? And so they're all kind of missing each other and things like that. And so they're not in the way. But if you're there live, there's photographers and cameramen and stuff like that, depending on the production, certainly. And so, like most things, the more you do it, the better you get at it. What kind of memorable things or cool gigs have you had that kind of maybe stand out?
One of the cooler ones I had was probably the third show I did. It was at the New Mexico State Fair in a giant barn. And when we first got there, it was nothing. There was nothing there, some bleachers on both sides of the stadium or the thing, and that's it. So after we pulled that together, it kind of made like a horseshoe type of effect where the entrance in and there's just bleachers all around, stacked full of people, and there's hay on the floor. And it was awesome. That was a lot of fun. I actually got to record Rocky Romero from New Japan Pro Wrestling at that show, which was awesome. So I'm a big fan of his. Most of the memories I have were just recording guys I watched growing up or watch currently, such as Super Crazy from ECW. That was awesome. It was fantastic. The one, Mil Muertes from Lucha Underground, I think he's in MLW now. He came out and he does this thing for people that don't know. He's like a big, scary guy and he wants to be intimidated, the man of 1,000 deaths. Mm-hmm. So he'll do this thing where he turns around and looks at the cameras, and on TV and stuff, the referee would run away from him because he's like, yo, I don't want to get hit too. Well, he did that at the show to me. And the first time he did it, I jumped back to kind of play along and keep that mystique going.
Sure.
Thing. And I did that to him twice where he actually took a chair and acted like he was going to hit me with it and everything, which was odd. Which I won't lie, kind of scared me. So I was like, what if he's legit getting mad at me? But anyway, at the end of the match, I was like, I need to take a picture of this dude. I love this guy. Walked up and was like, hey, Mil. He turned around, saw me, and just immediately grabbed me by the throat. Like fake choking me and stuff. And I play along with it, roll my eyes in the head like I'm dying. Got a sick picture of it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And then he let go and he big ol' hug, and you could tell he appreciated me just kind of playing along with him type of thing.
No,
so
that's
cool. That's definitely top notch, man. That was the best.
That's great. Yeah. If that big dude puts his hands on your throat, you have to sell it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's no way.
Just pop your head off.
Oh yeah, exactly. And dude, you could feel even just having his hands on my throat, you could feel how effing strong this dude was. Oh. So yeah, he could have snapped me like a twig.
That's great. And so you got him coming at you with a chair, from the camera, like that, like a first person, angle where he's coming right at you. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It was awesome.
No, that's good that again, what an interesting thing to, be able to watch these folks on TV and then, follow them in their careers and the kind of moves they make. And then there you are behind the camera, and then really interesting interactions like that one. And that's the coded message that hey, you're one of the guys, right? You're part of the show, right?
Yeah.
And that's cool, again, because those productions take a whole lot. Of course, they take the talent in the ring, and they are, you can't do anything without a couple wrestlers. But then, referees and ring announcers and the managers and valets and all that stuff, and cameramen, photographers, all that stuff is, people that print the stuff on the T-shirts for merch, all that stuff. The people, graphic designers that do posters, right?
Yep.
It takes a whole lot of people to make the show happen.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things I've picked up on doing this over the last few years. It's whether it's a bigger company or just a small kind of mom and pop one, like other ones I've done, every single person there they show up and they're ready to work, whether they're building the ring, they're selling hot dogs, they're taking tickets. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes other than just two dudes in a ring beating each other up. Right. It's insane how much goes into just one small wrestling show.
Right. And again, on the local, independent, whatever you want to call it, level, that it's still a lot of moving parts, man. It's still a whole lot of moving parts. And then you can just imagine amplifying that for things like, TNA, AEW, WWE, New Japan, and so on. Again, it's literally hundreds of people, right?
Oh, yeah.
Very cool. And so wrestling went away for a bit because of the pandemic. What did that do for the work you were getting there in El Paso and kind of maybe returning back into the live show atmosphere?
Well, the work in El Paso kind of ended a little before the pandemic due to some really bad building owners not being able to keep their stuff up to code.
Oh, wow.
Which is another thing that...
Yeah, having a venue is a big
exactly.
thing. People don't, like, again, indie wrestling, stuff like that. It's always the building, the venue, those kinds of things become really, really important.
Yeah, man. And just other venues sitting there saying, oh, yeah, you can totally have it. And then like 2 days beforehand, oh, we want another $300 deposit because you're wrestling and you're fighting, thinking it's more of a mixed martial arts show as opposed to pro wrestling, which obviously huge difference.
Sure.
But so once that slowed down, the El Paso scene was already kind of, I don't want to say dead, but it was dying for sure. The pandemic hit and it wiped it out, obviously, just like it did everywhere.
Sure.
Then around, I want to say October 2020, I get a message saying, hey, from one of the local shows, Adrenalina Lucha Libre. They're like, hey, we're going to try to bring back a show. We found a bar that's willing to have us there. Are you in? Hell yeah, I'm in. Let's do this. I'm all for it. Then it gets shut down. The spike starts going up again, the cases. The bar said, no way. And then finally in January, it's like, hey, 100% we're doing this. Let's do it. I jumped back in, and leading up to the event, I was very nervous, very scared because just for my own, like, I don't want to say perfectionist stuff, but make sure it looks good. Am I still going to be able to move around the ring the way I did? Still be able to read wrestlers like I did? All that kind of stuff. Plus am I going to be safe doing this with this many people there? Because, yeah, you're supposed to wear your mask, but we all know that thing's going to come off 20 minutes into the match when no one's paying attention to you. It was rough just trying to get over those mental humps to, okay, let's get in here. Let's do this. And that first show, the crowd was hot. They were so excited for just any kind of entertainment, let alone wrestling. And it went fine. A couple fans had to be told, hey, put your mask back on. The referee once had to be told, hey, put your mask up. Don't have it down by your chin. It went great. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun getting back into it.
Yeah, that's interesting, that big break, and then that you have to grapple with, yeah, I'm on board, but then also at what cost? Like, is it worth it? And and yeah, it's one of those things that I'm afraid of the virus, but I'm not like paranoid about it because I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I need like humanity now, right? And people need entertainment, and people were starving for that something and live, right? And just like people miss going to the movies because it's an experience, right? Rather than I can just order it at home. I think those are very real things that people had to, that people needed it, and I'm glad that the gig went well. And it's one of those things you can only mitigate a certain amount of risk. It's like if I got a text and was like, hey, you got a referee shirt? Like there's a gig next, I'd probably go,
Yeah.
I'd probably go and just mask up nice. And as a referee, I think it's a no-brainer to put gloves on. Like I always have my gloves on in case there's blood or something like that. But this I'd just be like, why not? And it's also good for the presentation. I think that's good that the ref did have a mask. Like that's it's appropriate. It's sends a message too. But we can still get our entertainment in a safe manner, as safe as we can.
Yeah, exactly. The real quick though, the funniest thing I saw at that first show was a guy sitting front row with a Blue Demon Junior mask and his actual face mask, like the safety one, over it, taped to the mask itself. I laughed at that guy all night. Every time I walked past him, I just shook my head and started laughing. He was the best. And he was super into the show, didn't care, but it was great that awesome. He was double masked that way. Yeah.
Lucha mask, and then that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm glad that independent wrestling is finding its way to kind of, have events. Some folks are doing, the social distancing thing and less people there, but then we also have opportunity to have it recorded and put it on like YouTube and different streaming channels and those kinds of things. I know promotions are doing that and having some good success that way. I think that's one of the things that, independent wrestling and then the way social media kind of moves these days is just a great way to put your content out there, and more eyes can see the indie wrestling that you used to just have to travel to.
Exactly. And it's not only just like what I've noticed, it's not just indie wrestling that's doing that. You're getting concerts, you're getting stand-up shows and stuff like that. Yeah, it sucks not being able to be in front of a huge, large crowd, for sure. But when the crowds are allowed to come in, you got more people that have probably never seen you before that are just scouring for wrestling, music, whatever kind of entertainment. They're going to go to those shows. So it's, in the long run, I think it'll eventually help out the industries. For sure.
Yeah, I think that part of it is here to stay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that will remain after COVID, the kind of virtual event, being an option to take in content and live stuff. Again, the comedy thing is interesting, stand-up comedy. And wrestling are interesting to have virtual because they rely so much on the audience.
Yeah, exactly. I can't get into wrestling without crowds. It's so nowhere weird. Near this fun.
It's very
like weird. I try to watch like the WWE product, like NXT and stuff, and it's good, the wrestling side of it, but the crowd pop, I miss that.
Yeah.
When a big event like the Royal Rumble just happened a couple weeks ago, and there was a few names that came out that were huge guys back in the day, and to no applause, and it was just, what? We're not cheering for Carlito or for Christian or for anybody?
Yeah, one of the biggest events they put on all year. Around this time, and as a wrestling fan, it's always like Road to WrestleMania season, and this is where things start to get kind of intense, and I'm watching every week and this and that. I was kind of catching up on some of the stuff. Just, I don't watch the product as regularly as I used to at all, but I do keep up and read and watch recaps and things like this. And they kept saying, Road to WrestleMania. I go, it doesn't feel like it. Like, no. And as a, it's the Super Bowl of wrestling, right? You just, even if you're not into football, you feel the Super Bowl coming. Like this, like we're wrestling fans. It's WrestleMania season. Got to get pumped up for the biggest show.
Exactly.
And it just doesn't feel like it. It just doesn't feel like it.
It really doesn't. And again, the only thing I can say that's the cause of that is just there's no fans.
I believe it.
It sucks, man.
Yeah, they're such an integral part, and when they're not in the building, it just changes it. Changes it for sure.
Oh, yeah, like I remember talking to somebody. It's like, imagine going back in time and watching the biggest moments of wrestling history with no crowd, like Tyson ripping off the shirt and showing Austin 316 with no one. It's like, who gives a shit?
Right.
Like it doesn't matter. Hogan slamming Andre, no crowd, no one cares.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that the crowd is there to create meaning. That accompanies the action you're watching. Yeah, it takes a big hit that way, and so even with the way they adapt and stuff, cinematic kind of matches and those things, which I know you kind of are not a fan of, but I kind of like it. I don't think it should be the standard, as it were. It should be a special attraction here and there, but
yeah, I can agree with that. But yeah, I don't like it. I like the crowd. I like the big pops and everything like that.
And that actually kind of speaks to that pivot from like, okay, the filmmaking kind of, I want a camera so I can make a movie as a director and this and that, versus let me capture the live action. A cinematic wrestling match isn't the thing you're into, right? Like just give me the live wrestling match and I record that.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. At this point, I'd rather record like high school football games than like a sitcom.
Yeah, like make a show, right? Make a short film or something, right?
Yeah, the live action is just so much fun. It's so unpredictable. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Do you record any other kind of stuff? Like with, I know you do the wrestling stuff, but do you do anything else in addition with your camera?
I've reached out, but usually they're like, no, we're okay. We got our guy. Like the one football, my high school actually here in El Paso, I contacted them. It's like, hey, do you need someone to do your football games or baseball or whatever?
Mm.
They're like, actually, our assistant coach does all that stuff. I was like, well,
Oh yeah, they're
all
making him
right.
pull double duty. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, all right, I get that. Well, if you change your mind and he calls out, holler at me, I guess.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it's one
Yeah.
of those things you'd have to figure. Well, what are the things I'd be happy to do, right? And sports stuff or whatever. Yeah, I didn't know if like I was like, do you like record like weddings or quinces to like make a few bucks because that shit pays well. Like
It does. It pays very well, but I don't like going to weddings and quinceañeras on my
Anyway.
personal time, so it doesn't do much for me.
You should go in like a wrestling shirt. You should start taking those gigs, but just go like like you're going to a
Just-
wrestling event.
Exactly. Just jeans and a wrestling shirt. Just all right, I'm here. Where's the bride? Let's do this.
The best man should put the groom through the table. You know, yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's like, all right, cool. Where's the ladder spot? What? No ladder spot at a quince? What the hell?
What kind of advice would you give to people that want to do something like, hey, I do want to get behind the camera or video editing or, again, just those auxiliary roles that are necessary in wrestling? You know, you and I can't speak to how to become a wrestler, but I was like, maybe give you a few tips to maybe other things, right? And so what would you say to people wanting to get into the maybe kinds of auxiliary roles?
If you want to do it, reach out to your local guys and ask. That's pretty much what I did. And if they say yes, the weeks leading up to the show, watch wrestling, but don't watch the wrestling. Watch the production side of it. Try to see where the camera cuts are, see where the hard cam is. Watch the cameraman on the outside of the ring, see where they're establishing their shots, like next to the post, in the middle, if they're squatting down, standing up. Find what you like to watch and try to edit your footage to make it look like that. That's the number one thing for sure.
And so what is maybe your setup? Because you mentioned hard cam and then you also mentioned, climbing on the ring and stuff. What is your setup?
I got my one camera, obviously, in my hand that I'm running around the ring. It's a Sony NEX 4000, I think it is. And then I have the hard cam at this current place upstairs in the DJ booth, looking down on the ring.
Nice.
And that's just an old cell phone I had that had a great camera, an old iPhone, and it works
cool.
great.
No,
And,
yeah, it's awesome. It's HD. Yeah.
Exactly. So I sit there, set that up, push record, then I go down there and just work. I don't have to worry about the hard cam at all. It's just recording. There's nothing else on that iPhone memory wise, so I can put 40 gigs of video on there, no problem.
Nice.
Yep.
And so since you have a hard cam, is that something that the promoter and wrestlers are using in their part of the production? Like are they mugging the hard cam, right? Or is it like, because when you watch WWE, where the hard cam side is where they do their taunts and promos and whatnot, right?
Yeah, not really. I have had it a couple times. When I set up my hard cam, normally I try to go where most of the fans are because they're going to promote or they're going to taunt and talk to the crowd, the biggest part of the crowd. So I try to put it behind there so it looks like that WWE style, like he's looking at the camera.
Right.
But most of the time they're not even aware of it, the wrestlers themselves. So I just try to now get the best shot possible. And then wherever the wrestlers are talking, I'm on the outside. I'm trying to walk around to make sure I got them face to face or taunting them and stuff, or where they taunt, I can see them and everything.
Nice. What other kind of goals maybe do you have for your videography and production stuff?
Honestly, I'd like to make a living out of it where I don't have to have a normal 9 to 5, just like with anybody in any kind of entertainment field. It's like, yeah, what I do is great. I love it, but I'll quit my job tomorrow if WWE calls me and says, hey, we need you to go on the road and record for us. I'm gone. I don't care. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I would love to be able to do that, even if I'm just doing 3 or 4 indie shows a week and then doing like maybe local hockey games or whatever sports games and stuff like that. Something that keeps me busy all week where I can pay my bills. That's the goal.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just gigging to that's what I do. Like I line them up. I got 4, 5, 6 gigs a week, and that's the job.
Exactly. That would be absolutely perfect. That's the dream scenario for me.
Nice. Do you do any like other projects? Like, do you create any other kind of content, or is the wrestling stuff just your main focus?
As of right now, wrestling's my main focus. I did start a podcast where I watched old WCW Nitro episodes and kind of recap them, but it became more of a job than a passion project. I was just like, okay, I watched it. Let me go talk about it. Let me watch another episode, and it kind of got boring.
Okay.
So I need to get back into that, but I've done that. I'm also a video game guy, so I have like play games on like Twitch and stuff like that, try to get that interaction that I'm missing through this pandemic, but that's few and far between. So my main creative outlook or output is through the wrestling recording and stuff like that.
Nice. And so since this is the Writers and Fighters podcast, I actually group you in the fighter world because you record fighting, or at least the illusion of fighting. But I always ask my guests, I invert the question depending on the guest. But so for you, I'll ask you, do you do any writing or reading? Anything like that you're interested in?
Not a whole lot of writing. I've always liked writing when I was growing up and stuff like that, but I never had that passion for it. I always get bored like 2 pages into whatever I was doing.
Sure. And
just gave up on it. As for reading, I don't read as much as I want to, but I do like to read. Big fan of Chuck Palahniuk. Bret Easton Ellis has some great stuff. There's this guy, Mario Acevedo, who did a book. He's actually from around the El Paso and New Mexico area. And it's like based on this detective who like solves like these horrible crimes and stuff like that.
Oh, cool.
Like paranormal type of stuff too. And it's I like it. I think it's great.
Nice.
And then the main stuff I read though is like biographies. I like the real world, real life, true story stuff.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. I was like, I wonder, do you read like wrestling biographies?
I do read a lot of them, not all of them, because there's some guys I don't care what the Young Bucks grew up doing. I don't care.
Right.
But guys like Foley, Jericho, Kane, Bret Hart, those guys that have long careers and a lot of stories and have gone through a lot of stuff. Yeah, every time they put out a book, I'm buying it that day.
Yeah, I do like the wrestling biographies, especially the ones that aren't like ghost written, and not all of them do that. Foley having the best one, right? The best biography. And I was lucky enough to come across that book. And really, it was one of the books that was kind of instrumental to me becoming a writer, I think. I just really thought he was sharp. And we know that he went on to write young adult fiction and stuff like that. And so he actually has some writing chops. So I'm a big fan of the Foley bios for sure.
Mm-hmm. Jericho's first book is like that too. It's really, really good. The Lionheart. That one's great.
Right. There's a handful out there that are pretty dope. Let's see what else we got here. Where can we find you online, man? Where can people see some of your work and whatnot?
All my matches that I've recorded are up on YouTube, just youtube.com/TomPuppet. And then you can find me on Instagram. The one I've been using the most is at Tom Puppet as well.
Great. So Tom Puppet on YouTube and then also Tom Puppet on Instagram, man. Hey, dude, I really appreciate you doing this. Again, one of the things I'm trying to do with this is not just exclusively get writers that we think of as writers and people in the fight world that we just think of as fighters, but maybe looking outside of those parameters. And in the wrestling world, in the indie wrestling world, it takes a lot of moving parts. So I definitely wanted to get you on and talk about being behind the camera and helping get more eyes on these kind of products. So I appreciate it, dude.
Of course, man. Thank you so much for having me, man. This is awesome.
All right, buddy. Take care.
You too, man.
All right, y'all. Thanks for listening to that interview with TJ Koracin, professional wrestling cameraman. If you want to check out his latest videos, which feature independent pro wrestling from the El Paso, Texas area, head over to youtube.com/TomPuppet. If you want to follow TJ on Instagram, head over to @TomPuppet on Instagram. Make sure you tune in next week for episode 13. We're shifting from the fighting side to the writing side. We're going to have another songwriter on the podcast. If you're enjoying this music, make sure you tune in on episode 13 because I'm going to have the musician that composed this music, LC Flowers, will be on the podcast. He has a new album coming out. He's responsible for the outro and intro music for Writers and Fighters, a podcast. As usual, y'all, be good, be safe, take care of each other, and we'll see you next week.